something like this, I look at it and I have to kind of reverse engineer the whole thing. My degree is in materials engineering, so we learn about plastics, we learn about injection molding, extrusions, and all that sort of thing. So the things that I look for is, how this part was made. And so I can see the little lines here. These are the original lines that GM did back in the day. So I try to preserve everything the way.
You see, back in the days, you're talking about in the 40s.
In the 40s.
That compass is made in.
Yeah, in the 40s.
Well, not that one.
Yeah, not this particular one.
And they
but
still go for, even then, $3,000 to $4,000 for those, right?
About 15 years ago in the box, I paid $3,500.
Wow.
The challenge for this piece wasn't so much making the part, it was the color. I wanted to make sure that I dialed in that taupe color, because that's what sets everything apart from all the other compasses that are out in the market, or even the original compasses that were offered.
What's going on, everybody? This is Joe Ray, and this is a WiredDown show. We have a guest today. I mean, all of us, myself and all the guests, always have a story to tell. We're going to go way, way back, almost into a time machine. And that story will be told by Juan Ramirez. We're going to get into bombs, but not just any bomb. Very articulate, a relic, a masterpiece. Juan, go ahead and introduce yourself to the fan base.
Sure. My name is Juan Ramirez. I'm originally from Escondido, born and raised in Escondido, California. Parents are from Jalisco and Michoacan. I grew up with cars around me. My dad would love to tinker with cars on the weekends. He loved trucks. He loves those Chevy 40s and 50s trucks. And as a kid, I just got glued to it. And then he would give me some model cars. And as I was getting older, I was just getting more attached to those vintage cars. And it wasn't until about middle school where I was getting the Lowrider magazine, looking through the beautiful cars, and the ones that kept drawing me were the bombs. That Marco Patiño was one of my favorite photographers that would feature a lot of these cars. And as I was getting more into reading about these cars and bombs, it wasn't until maybe the early 90s that I saw the Jerry Palomino Fleet Line. It was a burgundy one. And I said, that is my dream car. I just love the flow. I love the way it looks. And I pretty much have enjoyed vintage cars.
The other style of lowrider cars didn't suit you then, right? The lean, fastback, Impalas, all that. It had to be something designed that looked like a bomb to you.
Oh, well.
What was the difference for you, and why did you appreciate the bombs more?
The fat fenders, the big wide bodies, the Art Deco or post Art Deco look from the 30s and 40s, a lot of chrome. I mean, absolutely, the Impalas are I love those 58s, 59s, but I would say that the bombs just has some kind of special, something in my soul where I would just love all the accessories and that time period. I look at the old black and white pictures, the way folks were dressed, that time period. It just felt like kind of going back in time and looking at these cars.
That's why I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I just think we're born into it, that we like that style of car, because bomb guys are totally different from the traditional guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's vice versa. I mean, they drive both cars, but there's a reason your heart goes out to a certain style. And the bombs are the original lowriders. Were you at an early age growing up, the cars that you had seen, mentioning the certain photographers, the bombs more or less, there's only about 4 or 5 colors on them. You can choose most of them. In the middle 70s or early 70s, they were custom painting and they're making them wild flakes and everything. That's gone away for the last 20 or so years. I think everybody's more into restoring them and bringing them back to their beauty. Somehow, we're talking about a car that you have now, a 47.
Yep.
That's about almost 80 years old now.
Right.
So did any of the old paint jobs, the lowrider styles from the 70s on the bombs, did that even phase you at all, or was it just the one color or the two tones?
I was liking the flashier, like these metallic paints. I thought of something traditional from the 70s and 80s. I have family members down in San Diego that were into lowriding when I was a kid
Yeah.
in the early 80s that had bombs that had the flashy colors. But I guess it was just a matter of preference and looking at old photos that kind of drew me towards the old pastel original colors.
Education wise, growing up, it takes a certain type of person to build a bomb and to build any lowrider. But it takes very, very special people. And there's only a few of them out there that are master builders, craftsmen. And that's how you became one. Looking back at some of these cars you mentioned, is that what kind of carved you up right there?
Yeah,
Made you a niche out of this?
I always felt like I was a hands-on type of person,
Uh-huh.
always doing something in the garage. Again, my dad was always wrenching something in the garage, giving model cars, helping him out. Like in high school, he had a 40 LaSalle, a Cadillac, and he taught me how to put an engine together. That was the first engine I ever worked on was a flathead engine, and I said to myself, they're not that difficult, but there is a certain ABC, certain amount, a workflow that you have to do, and I just love the detailing. That's kind of something that was probably ingrained as a kid, So to me, it's just the journey of building something is gives me that passion, that labor of love.
Even though everything and the way things are innovated today, the style of car, even the cars today, now we have hybrids, electric cars, and all that. For you to have the education and the hobby that you have to go way back and live in the past, and you don't want to leave that era. You want to stay right there.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like we got new technology. Things are more digital.
Right.
A lot of electric cars. We're moving forward with progress and technology, but I feel like I don't want to forget what was done in the past because there is a certain essence and passion and class that was these cars that were built in the past that people took pride. A lot of them were hand built, so I don't
That's
want to lose
cool.
that.
What type of education you have growing up before you? What was your first car growing up?
Well, my first car, at least the bomb was a 51 Chevy 4 door.
Hmm.
Couple grand, I paid for it, and it wasn't pretty or anything. It needed a paint job, it needed upholstery, but it ran. And that's where I learned how to drive the three in the tree. It was all stock, and I just enjoyed cruising that around Escondido, during that's right around when I started going to college. So I was actually driving up to San Luis Obispo. That's where I attended a university up there in Cal Poly. So to me, that car was really simple, easy to work on, but it looked really cool. A lot of chrome, has that nice round look, and that's something that I was looking for.
Going to college in a bomb, right?
Yep,
Yeah, most of us to jump into these cars and get into this whole culture of customizing and building. And then we acquire small families, and that's how we start from there. When you go to college and you get an education, the right education, you kind of don't look back on hobbies. You can always do that down the line.
right,
And after an education like you've had, you go into other fields and then you just don't even get into the car thing because most of the time they're not investments, but it just depends on what you do
right.
in this cultural hobby called low riding. Um, College, which college did you go to?
I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Mhm.
I majored in materials engineering, and I knew at an early age I wanted to do some sort of engineering. I love math, I love science, kind of thing. Actually, even before that, I've enjoyed all the space stuff. In the '80s, it was about NASA, space shuttles, and I thought, I want to go maybe into NASA. What is it going to take for me to get there? And I had friends that were in the military that went into the Air Force and said, hey, to kind of go through that space program, you want to look into the military, get part of the test pilot program, so you can hopefully get picked into the astronaut program in NASA. But around high school, I said, military is not for me. I'm just going to go directly into college. Again, math and science was kind of my favorite subjects. Uh, English was kind of a tough language to learn when I was a kid because we spoke Spanish at home. But then as I kind of got through elementary, I got better with English. But still, the passion was math and science. It felt like it came natural to me. So I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo right out of high school, And right off the bat, it was really difficult. The math, science was difficult, but it was all about learning, having friends that were in the same type of environment. A lot of it just happened to be raza, people that were out of the house for the first time,
Mhm.
and we became good friends. And we joined study groups, and we worked on these problems, engineering problems that we had to study, and that became a lot of these folks are still lifelong friends.
Back in the days when Lowrider was around, you scholarship program,
Yep, yep. As I mentioned, every month I go to 7-Eleven and grab the magazine
right?
and flip through it. And I said, oh my gosh, they have a scholarship program. You got to write an essay, discuss what your plans are. And I wrote everything about going to college and all that. And I don't remember the timing, but I remember sending the essay, and then a few months later, I got a letter saying that I won money, and it was during my freshman year at Cal Poly that I won some money to pay for for my books and everything. So that first year was pretty much covered with Lowrider magazine.
That's cool. And then you just gave back to lowriders, to that
Yeah,
industry,
and I feel like I want to give back,
right?
because of what was done.
Tell us about this 47 Aero sedan.
Sure. So
The whole build, I mean, it's just not frame off. If any customization, if you clip the front, leaves in the back, four leaf in the back, start from the beginning.
the car.
Why is this build
Mhm,
very articulate? Why is it? You have a lot of patience. You're very smart. You're an engineer,
mhm.
so you understand taking a car completely apart and putting it back together. And what you saw back then in the 40s, even me, for a person like me that took one of those cars apart, I shook my head and I banged my head on that dashboard. But you saw all of that and you still made it a challenge to build it in that time, but you have to have it perfected then, right?
Yeah, and what people might already know this, but I'll just mention it here. Taking a car apart is easy. Putting it back together, that's a whole different story. Especially when you do customize.
Uh-huh.
It is like you it's a domino effect. You change one thing and oh my gosh, you have to, relocate the gas tank, or you got to relocate this. And once you start doing that, then other things might not fit. So yeah, it does become a challenge, but it's the fun part. That's part of an engineer. I like to troubleshoot. I like to have a challenge.
So this whole complete build, where did you acquire the car at? Where'd you find the car at?
It was up in San Pablo in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
So I lived in Escondido, and back in the days, not the Auto Trader, but it was a classic car trader. There was an old publication. They sold cars, classifieds, and a gentleman up there in the Bay Area near Richmond was selling this 47. So what I actually did, I called him up, and he said he wanted like 5 grand for it, and I said, it looked all complete. I booked the flight. I went all the way up to Oakland, and one of my buddies there picked me up, and we went straight to this gentleman's house, and there we saw the 47, and then I just drove it. It was all stock. It was still the original 6-volt system. It had the inline six. We just drove around town. I said, "This is a really it's a really good buy." At the time, this is November 2003, so I know times have changed, but I paid. We wheeled and dealed, and I got the car for $4,500 and had it flatbed trailered all the way down to Escondido. Drove it around for about 3 or 4 months, and it was around March of 2004, and I know this because in March of 2004, I started taking the car apart, and I was getting Ziploc bags and Sharpies. I'm basically noting where all the parts were going and taking pictures. They didn't have cell phones with the camera, so I had digital camera, taking pictures of what I was doing to take it apart. Okay, this part went here, this part went there, and I started to print out these pictures and put them in the Ziploc bag. I wanted that 47 to be lower. It was all stock, so it was pretty high. And I couldn't drive it more than 45 miles an hour because it was still a stock system. And I told myself, there's no way I'm going to drive this on the freeway. And the first strategy for me was, well, and at the time I was on the Chevy Talk website,
Hmm.
and they were saying just throw a V8 in it, and then you're ready to go. So I got a V8, and I was going to go with the V8 and an automatic transmission, but I had friends, and they were convincing me to, hey, stay true to what that original car looked like. Nothing wrong with the V8, but I do like that original look and the challenge of finding parts for it. And so it was Chevy Talk and Lay It Low. Those were the forums. That was like kind of the go-to for lowriders, and there was some lay it low had a lot of cool information about bombs, but it was more, I would say, tailored more for the 60, 70 lowriders, which also had a lot of great information on hydraulics, bagging your car, and all that. But I told myself at that time, there's really nothing, at least online, for just specifically for bombs. And for me, a bomb would be 1954 and older. Something fat fendered and older is a cutoff. And so at that time, my buddy and I said, you know what, we can create a website, which we called chevybombs.com. And we were just going to have a knowledge based forum just to have people that can share their information, their skill set about their experience with bombs and where to get parts and accessories and all that. We would go to the Pomona swap meet and pass out flyers. We got this new website. Feel free to join. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram.
Hmm.
This is 2004, 2005. We were prototyping the website, and sure enough, we started getting a lot of more momentum. And a lot of them were guys, a lot of guys that didn't know computers, veteranos that didn't even know
Yeah.
computers, but they got hooked. And I was getting hooked because we were all sharing about um, 30s and 40s and early 50s. This goes here, this goes there, and sharing pictures. I would actually get complaints from the spouses because their husbands were no longer doing things around the house. They were hooked on their computer, typing away and looking at, selling car parts. Or we had a classified section there because, again, it was a small niche. It was just for bombs. We were getting really good momentum that we started having annual car shows, or little car meets, and mainly we would hold them in Downey, but to the point where we got so much, we got so many members on the website that one time we had one up in the Bay Area because a lot of folks were from up there that didn't, it was going to be quite a drive, so we had one over there. I think our 5-year anniversary, we had Jay Bueno come in and feature us in the Lowrider magazine
Hmm.
when we had the show there in Downey. Again, it was so packed that my friend and I, Eddie, that we created the website, we didn't know about permits. We had this car show there at a park. It got so packed that the police showed up. Downey police showed up and were trying to shut us down. Who's running the show? What's going on? Where's your permit? And we said, hey, we're from Escondido. We're not from this area. We were just gonna have a picnic and nothing fancy here, but they were cool actually. They said, you know what, go ahead and make sure you guys aren't drinking or anything. We're just make sure everything's quiet, and they were respectful and they let us have the show. So it was really good event.
Like a convention almost.
Exactly.
And you put all these heads together. It's
Hmm.
almost like hydraulics when they were dinosaurs. And now look at what we have today.
Right.
They're indestructible, so to speak. Um, so what did you do when it came to your car putting it together? Do you have a lot of help or you did most of the work yourself?
No,
Did you send it out to different shops or?
yeah, both of those. So definitely a lot of help. Quickly, I knew Mike Ramos' name from, I knew his name from Lowrider magazine. He was a
Uh-huh.
go-to for accessories and fleet lines, and he became a really good resource for finding out, these parts for this car, this part for that year, and you can talk to this person, you can talk to that person for these sort of things. But the network just grew. Mike was a great resource. A lot of folks in San Diego, a lot of folks in LA, folks out of state too, that had a lot of information on these cars. Um, so I tore down the car. That was the easy part. I did that pretty much myself. But as I put it back together, I kept changing the strategy. I was going to go airbags, Mustang 2 in the front. And the Mustang 2 just kind of was because of the V8. But now I had a buddy out in Texas said, sell that V8 and I'm going to get you a 261 engine, an inline six that's got more pep than the original engine. And I want you to go ahead and build that engine up. Um, and let's make it work because that car deserves to have something a little more like of that originality from the 40s,
Nostalgic still, huh?
nostalgic.
Yeah.
So I got the engine from Texas, and I got it, and I just paid for the freight. And my buddy was from Viejitos, and he said, "Go ahead and get that engine rebuilt." So I had it rebuilt out in Santa Fe Springs at L&R Engines. They did a really good job. Again, I look at this like a big model car. I had a frame, I had it all sandblasted, I powder coated it, started building up the transmission, which is a simple Sagan all 3 speed. The goal was to get it onto the highway because I couldn't do the 45 mile per hour thing that I started to learn even as an engineer. and we go through school learning about all these gears and everything. It wasn't until I was getting my hands onto the car and understanding what gear ratios meant and transmission and rear ends and this engine, all the power to understand what good gear ratio on the rear would work really well to be on the freeway. So I got my hands on a 68 Chevelle rear end that had a 308 gear that was a highway friendly gear for an inline six. So after the drivetrain was getting all put together, the body was off the frame. It was on the body cart. Like many people go through this experience with paint shops. I unfortunately didn't have a good experience with the first painter.
Hmm.
Was kind of stuck in there for many years, and some misunderstandings. I finally just pulled it out. And at that time, I had already met a buddy of mine named Alex Rodriguez. And I met him because more by accident through Instagram because he was showing some exhaust manifolds that were super shiny. And I said, "How the heck did you get them really shiny?" He says, "Oh, they're porcelain coated. They're porcelain treated." I said, "I never heard of such a thing." He says, "I can get them your exhaust manifolds porcelain coated, and I happen to have 53 Corvette. This is the factory dual exhaust on an
Mhm.
inline six, and I wanted to get them porcelain coated." I went to his place in Pomona. He opened up the garage door, and I saw two beautiful cars, beautiful painted, a 39 coupe, and it was like a 49 Chevy truck. And I quickly asked him, who painted your cars? He's like, "I did. I painted them." I said, "Shit, this is," I said, "I have a car that needs paint. I had a really bad experience with the painter." And he says, "I can take care of your car, but it's going to be about a year and a half wait." And I said, "I'll do it." In the meantime, I actually got the body and I took it to Montebello where I had it all sandblasted, all the sheet metal inside and out, sandblasted down the bare metal. Shot the primer after that, and it basically was on standby in my garage until he was available. And he was true to his word. A year and a half later, I got the body and all the sheet metal over to his place, and he got on it right away. I had picked a green color off a 50 or 51 Ford F1 truck. It was called Ford Meadow Green. I said, "This is the color that I want." He says, "Okay, cool, I'll work with it." He sends me a part in the mail, and he says, This is the color we're gonna go with." It was a little bit different, and before I even had the answer to say, "Oh my god, I love this color," he was already painting the car. I mean, the color was immaculate. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a green that has that 40s vibe pastel that kind of looks a little bit teal, a little more like a pastel green that, I said this is going to look great with the interior. Interior was pretty straightforward. SMS fabrics, they provided the original stitch for a 47 Chevy, so I kind of went with that. But in about 3 months, he knocked out the bodywork, he knocked out the paint, and I got rounded up my friends and my brothers. We went over to his place and we all lifted the body and put it onto the frame, just like a big model car. And I mean, when I first saw the color and all the paint, I mean, it was just like, wow. All the issues that I had with that old painter just went out the window. And I told myself, you know what? One misfortune was a blessing in disguise because I met a good friend, and then as well as getting a remarkable paint job. And from that point forward, he has been helping me out assemble that car because what my friend said in text is he says, "Juan, just because you take it apart, it was really easy to take apart, may not come back together the same way. Because once you chrome plate something, it's thicker. The original plating was a single layer chrome.
Mhm.
Now we're talking triple plating. We got nickel, copper, and chrome." And he was right because when everything started to kind of go back together, shoot, things were not fitting the same anymore. So, and things were painted, so there was some thickness involved. A lot easier to take something apart when it's dirty and all that, but when it's all painted and beautiful like this, there's a certain finesse and like, okay, you got to be careful when you start putting things back together,
Even for an engineer.
even for an engineer. And yes, I am a perfectionist, but I've learned to let go of a lot of things, because I do want to enjoy the car, and it has been a
You'll
journey.
never finish it. Yeah.
Exactly,
You'll never
exactly.
finish it.
Yeah,
And then I know that sometimes you have to cut a corner, but you got to go to sleep at night. And I don't care if they say, man, but someone's going to find out. Oh, no one will know. Only I'll know, but you're going to be awake at night. You have to
right.
do it the right way, especially if it's an investment at the end. And that's what makes this hobby is a very expensive hobby that we have, but if you do it right and you have patience, I think I've set out on every car that I've built, and I've always, I'm going to enjoy this one this time, and I'm going to do it right. I'm going to take my time, and I wind up assembling them 15 other ways.
Yeah,
It's just that I'll jump into that, I'll jump into that. I just want to see the finished product, and
right.
that's my weakness there. But for you being an engineer, so you're saying that this car took about 6 years, more or less,
So
for the final finish for what it is right now, turnkey?
yeah, I would say the last 5 to 6 years has been like officially more aggressive, like things coming back together. Because in the past it was a back and forth thing. I was gonna go airbags,
Hmm.
and then I didn't do the airbags because at that time, Pro Hopper was around having raffles. So I
Hmm.
bought a raffle ticket for $5, submitted a ticket, and maybe his name was Eric, and he just called me and said,
Yeah,
"Hey, you won the raffle." And I said, "Whoa,
that's
what the
cool.
heck?" And it was a whole two pump setup with all the hoses, everything minus the batteries.
I'm
So it all
sure
came in.
MacGyver and those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, great guys.
great guys, and very like they were really helpful with like I was new to hydraulics. I understood more or less how they worked, but I'll be the first one to say, look, I'm a student. I'm gonna learn, and so they were helping me out how to like everything was hooked up. Again, my buddy that gave me that engine, that inline six, his name was Jaime Trujillo from Viejitos. He said, "That's great that you have those Pro Hopper pumps. Now you're gonna sell them because you're gonna invest that money into aircraft hydraulics." And here I go, what are aircraft hydraulics? And that was another world that was open up to me. So
But you're going down the right lane, though. I understand that, even from the V8, but I mean, you're still doing it right. It's
y-
perfect.
yeah, yeah. And,
But
and at the
the
time, I didn't
cost
know.
just continues to go
Oh,
up.
the costs kept going.
So
Yeah,
when you get into hydraulics, being who you are, what did you think about that? Did you actually study airbags a
I
little
did.
bit? What, how they work? They both leak, right? We all know that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all it's the quality of the equipment and the installer, if they know what they're doing,
right,
so to speak. And those bad installers give all products a bad name anyways. But there's really no difference in comfort if you know what you're doing and what you're putting on there.
right.
So how is the ride? Is that what you went doing?
Aircraft hydraulics.
Yeah.
The ride's actually pretty good. Hoppos did help me install those and worked with Alex and his dad. Great people. Met them when I went out to their shop. I think before they moved out in the Upland area,
Hmm.
and they did they custom made a bridge because the original one that I had was not in the right spot. That's something I learned about this car project was how to use a grinder because I had to cut a lot of welds off and redo things, 2 link, 4 link, because the car originally came with leaf springs,
Right.
and I wanted more of a like a pivoting action versus the leaf spring. Um, but yeah, the car cruises really well, and I would say really no complaints.
Touches the floor, lays out.
Pretty close. It's a
Hmm.
couple inches, not what I call the tovar low, where they're all the way to the ground.
Hmm.
It's close, but not close, and I'm good with it because this is my official first lowrider. The 51 that I had before was fully stock. I'm learning really quick about like, when you have to lift it up when you go up to a driveway, and sometimes you forget to, it's just some minor scratches in the bottom that I'm gonna touch up later, but it's the fun of it. And again, airbags versus hydraulics. I know that's been a debate. I've seen it at Lay Low. I saw it on my own website, Chevy Bombs. It comes down to preference. For me, I just love the sound. After I heard what a Pesco hydraulics sound like, I love the look and I love the sound. And again, it comes to preference. I love the motion it makes when you drop it. They're the 8X from Andy's.
Yeah.
Became good friends with him
Yeah.
online. Really cool guy. Really helped supporting me with a lot of information there. Um, but aircraft hydraulics was just there's a world in its own there. It's a niche where there's folks that are really dedicated and specialized in what they do there, and they take great pride in when they, crank out tanks or pumps and that sort of thing.
Once again, if you go back into the 40s when they built this car, now you're going into the aircraft equipment that they built too,
Right,
and things have changed completely.
right,
But at the end of the day, what are you going to do? You can't invent the wheel.
right.
You just live with what you got. Um, Shocks all the way around
Shocks in the rear only.
and the rear only,
Yeah,
and it rides pretty good, huh?
yeah. Mhm.
And you're able to jump on that freeway, everything, and do what you want.
I've been breaking in the engine the last month and a half, and
Hmm.
oh yeah, it's a lot different. So the engine has this is something else I learned from Jaime out in Texas. Speed equipment, on these inline sixes, they're they're treasures. They're really hard to find, and so a valve cover, a side cover, an intake, manifold. So what I have are Nixon products, Nixon valve cover, side cover, and then the intake. I went from a single carb to a two dual carb Zenith carbureted engine. And there's a huge difference from that stock inline six that I had at 216 to what I have now. Now it has more pep, more pick off the line.
Inline six, keeping it real, keeping it old school. Now you're going to get into accessories, original accessories, aftermarket accessories, visors, skirts, all of that stuff. What did you do there?
So the skirts, yeah, I just going back to Cal Poly when I used to sketch bombs and I used
Hmm.
to sketch them in class when it was too boring. I put skirts and visors on my bombs. You know, I just love the side profile,
Yeah.
and so I said, yeah, gotta have skirts. So the flea line, the 47 flea line, the original skirts that GM offered were the type that had the trim, this flea line. So the 47 flea line, there's two models. There's a four-door German helmet or the
Hmm.
sports sedan or the two-door Aerosedan. So I
Right.
have this Aerosedan, the
Right.
two-door. And so I went with the skirts, and again, buddies were like, you got to get the JC Whitney the skirts that are kind of hard to find. They're the staggered kind of skirts that have the trim not going all the way across. And I was able to get some of those from a friend out in Colorado. And he was able to make a trip out here for something else. And I ended up getting those again, not cheap, but to me, it's worth it. It has a different look versus just kind of like the, the, the stock style skirt, which are fine too. The visor I had originally bought in a Fulton, very common, a Fulton visor.
Hmm.
Um, again, they're like a Pekka visor has a little maybe a little more pep, a little more chrome, a little more flash. Not too common. So I actually ended up getting both, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna run the Peckett. I just like the way it looked. I saw some advertisement. I saw some folks that had some sample pictures, and I went with that. So and accessories, that is, I think, one of the biggest things that separates us from like us bomb, folks to maybe newer, like you have newer cars, the imports and all that. Cars are ready to go, and it's pretty much already accessorized. But there's a certain niche and another world to accessories on these cars that many times the accessories are worth more
On
than
the
what you pay
car.
for the car.
Right.
And I learned that really fast, at least with the 47. Um, again, it's a treasure hunt, and you can go to the Pomona swap meets, eBay, Craigslist, and, stuff online. I traveled a lot for my part of my job when I was in med devices, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But when went out of state, I go to Washington State for a conference. I would go get lost and go to these back farm places that had antique stores and just look for accessories. I would find stuff in there, auto accessories for the
Did you
car.
already know the accessories? You had a list of things that you wanted.
Yeah, I already had an idea.
Did
Again,
you go back to your buddies that helped you along with their taste? Did
Chevy
they tell you,
bombs,
don't do that, don't put that on, don't, because you can, there's no limit to them.
right?
And yeah, they do cost more than a car.
Yeah.
So did you get anybody's advice on what you were doing, or this is what you wanted?
Yeah, a lot of folks online on Instagram. Big Dan, he's a young. I still say he's a young kid. He's probably in his 20s now, but I knew him as a teenager. He and his dad. I mean, they're experts. They do a lot of picking. They go to swap meets. Very knowledgeable about what goes where and what about how much things are going for, give or take. And he taught me a lot. Ramos taught me a lot. Um, Chevy bombs. A lot of the guys on there shared stuff. They would post their accessories for sale on there.
Hmm.
I said, holy moly, that, a few thousand for that. I didn't know that was that expensive. I learned really quick how rare certain things were and the sought after, it's a supply and demand kind of thing. So online Chevy bombs and going to a lot of the swap meets, and just you build up a network of friends, that they've been there, done that, and they understand how much things could typically go
And
for.
of course, misery loves company.
Right.
Building a car like that old, and then God, putting it together and immaculate, just like the day it was built, right?
Yeah, I love all the accessories that go on a 47. My personal preference is not to fully load it interior on the inside. I don't want it to take away from all the beautiful wood grain that the car originally came. And I had all work. My buddy Ruben out there in City of Bell did the wood grain all by hand. Just it's just that again coming back to that hand crafting that was done back in the 40s. The folks took pride to do even though there were large number production on these cars in the in 47, there was still that essence of like folks taking pride and doing things by hand. Like I said, I don't want it to fully accessorize in the interior because, the dash, believe it or not, is not that big. When you're in that car, even though it's got a big, it's a pretty long wheelbase, fat fenders and all that, um, the dash in itself is not really that wide. It's not
Mhm.
that big. So I try not to load it up too much. And especially when you have a visor and like a Fulton traffic light finder, things start to like obscure the view when you're driving. So
Especially with a visor.
exactly.
You have to lay down in the front seat just to see out.
Right.
Um, you have other hobbies just as well.
Right.
And we're talking about accessories too right now. We're almost stepped into that right now. Um, you actually make your own car parts. Tell us about that. It's another hobby you acquired.
Yeah, but it was actually kind of out of necessity at the time. So a little backstory on that is that even though I talked about working with, I wanted to work for NASA and do all that engineering. My path after college actually led me into medical devices. So what I was working on at the time were stents, catheters, manufacturing and designing these devices to go into the body to either treat blockage in the heart or folks that are going to get a stroke or to prevent a stroke or post stroke. These devices would actually go inside the body to treat those diseases. So I've been in med devices for about 26 years. And during that time, and I actually just recently changed industries, but 26 years of that taught me how to work with my hands. Again, these devices that are going to human beings. A lot of these devices were tested, well, sometimes they were tested on animals, which we frowned upon.
Mhm.
So we relied on models, heart models, and I had a role where I was making atriums and ventricles on these heart models, human heart models, so that way we can test our devices, we can test competitor devices and see how they perform. Just like a mechanic has a tool, a drawer of tools, we supplied the tools to the physicians, to the surgeons. Hey, this feels good going inside, through this anatomy, or I don't like how flexible, or I don't like how stiff this is. Can we tweak it here and there? So during that time when I was doing these models, I was doing a lot of molding and casting. Something I learned as a kid when I had a class on doing molding, but that time I was doing a lot of molding and casting. At that time, I had actually bought a Fulton Traffic Light Finder. It was an NOS, and basically it's just a prism that goes on the top of the dash. So when you have an exterior visor, you wouldn't be able in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, you would not be able to see the traffic light hanging in the center. At that
Mm.
time, they were hanging in the center. So folks had to be kind of hunched down looking at it like this. So Fulton provided this accessory that basically refracted the image, and you would be able to see the traffic light from here, so you wouldn't have to be going down. I bought an NOS, a new old stock one, beautiful piece. And about 6 months later, like a lot of plastics do, original plastics, they crack. In this particular one cracked inside. It was an internal crack. And I said, oh my gosh, now I'm going to have a Fulton Viewer with a bunch of little cracks. And at that time, I was trying to buy another one on eBay. And the guy that was buying, he actually was outbidding me on eBay on all of them. I reached out to him and said, "Hey, can you sell me one of those? Because I need one to replace one." He's like, "Well, I'll sell you one," but he tacked on like 200-300 bucks on top of it. So obviously that made me upset. But then at the time I said, since I'm molding and casting hard models, flexible materials, why won't I look into materials that are really hard and kind of apply what I was doing with hard models and see if I can reproduce my piece that was cracked because the cracks were internal, but the
Mhm.
surface was really smooth. So I go to Craigslist and I buy all my equipment on there, and I took it all home in the garage. And for the next 6 months, I pretty much did a lot of trial and error. mold making and how to like cast materials. And about 6 months later, I came out with my first part after so many mistakes, the one that looked even better than the original, super sharp, super clear. And I was able to paint all the little letters, a lot of little detail on here. And I said, "Oh, this is fantastic. I made one." When I was doing heart models, I was using a lot of pigments and colors to tint the different parts of the heart. So I happened to use one of those pigments to make the second one. I add a little bit of blue, and I looked at it and I said, "This looks really cool. It kind of looks like an icy blue looking prism." I went to a car show in LA and I said, showed a friend over there, and I said, "Look at this funky looking prism. Made it out of blue tint." And he yanks it out of my hand, and he says, "How much you want for it?" I said, "What do you want? Why do you want it? It's supposed to be clear." He says, "I got a blue Suburban, and this is gonna fit perfect for my car." And I said, "Oh shit, I think I'm onto something here." So then the next one, Coke bottle green, root beer brown, and onesie twosies, selling them through. It was all word of mouth, maybe a little bit on eBay, and I was making pretty good money just on the side, just a little hobby. And I started with the Prism. And as I kind of got my skills better at making parts, I started expanding things to like horn buttons. So
Wow.
many times, so in the early 1900s, you had Bakelite. Bakelite was the original plastic,
Hmm.
and it's beautiful plastic because it has a beautiful looking texture on it and all that. Unfortunately, Bakelite over time it cracks. And after Bakelite, the very first plastic that came out after Bakelite was called cellulose acetate, which is the brand name is called Tenite. And so a lot of toy and car companies started building or using that Tenite for steering wheels, knobs. That's why when you go into an old car and you have an original steering wheel and it stinks, it's because that plastic was organic. And because it was organic, it had that stench because it started to degrade. It shrinks. It shrivels. You see a lot of steering wheels that are cracked and split. And so what I ended up doing was a lot of these guys that had these horn caps, they were cracked. But I would tell them, don't worry about that. Let's save the emblem. There's an emblem right here. Let's save the emblem, and I will carefully take it out. And I would already have a mold made for the cap, and I knew how to color match and how to airbrush and all that. And I made a duplicate, and it came out better than the original. So here I am doing a clear one, and again, working with Mike Ramos, we were talking about the designs and the colors and all that. That I decided to do a root beer brown. I did a tint on the plastic, so it had kind of had like a little different effect. A lot of guys like this.
Yeah,
It's like, you know what,
I can
this
see
looks
why.
different,
Yeah.
and so just the portfolio grew, and a lot of the things were just small parts, small knobs, that sort of thing. About 15 years ago, I bought myself an NOS 4748 GM Compass. Now, a lot of guys that see this probably think it's an original. I would think it's an original because sometimes I have to peek to see if it is one of mine. I bought the compass because I said try to challenge myself to see if I can reverse engineer this compass because I want to see if I can put one in my car, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a demand. But because I do everything handmade, it's a onesie twosie kind of thing. So back in 2012, 2013, I did a small limited run, and again, within a week they were gone. I mean, they flew like hotcakes, and I will admit that they did pay for my chrome. I mean, it was just a lot of the investment that I spent on making this thing helped part of my car project. But something like this, I look at it and I have to kind of reverse engineer the whole thing. But my degree is in materials engineering, so we learned about plastics, we learned about injection molding, extrusions, and all that sort of thing. So the things that I look for is, how this part was made, and so I can see the little lines here. These are the original lines that GM did back in the day. So I try to preserve everything the
When you
way
see back in the days, you're talking about in the 40s.
in the 40s.
That compass is
Yeah,
made in
yeah, in the
19, well,
40s.
not that one.
Yeah, not this particular
And
one,
they'd
but
still go for, even then, even with all those materials, and you're reinventing them,
right.
so to speak, um, 3 to 4 grand for those, right?
About 15 years ago in the box, I paid $3,500
Wow.
for an original one with the instructions and everything. Now I don't even know what they go for, an original. But something like this, I obviously will not charge. I will not go that high.
Right.
But I do look at there's a supply and demand, And I spent a lot. And that's the challenge for this piece wasn't so much making the part, it was the color. I wanted to make sure that I dialed in that taupe color because that's what sets everything apart from all the other compasses that are out in the market, or even the original compasses that were offered. But something like this, yeah, I mean, it was the color that I basically sat there with a spreadsheet with all the different colors and dyes and everything, and I went through numerous runs, and I just like a scientist would write down too bright, too low, too dark, too clear, and until finally I hit for me was right on the money. And then spotlights, you know, a lot of the spotlights, the grips they break. So I actually bought a spotlight and it was cracked. And so I was able to reverse engineer and make a mold. Even though I had cracks, what I typically do is I take my original part, I make a mold off the original. I don't ever like to work with the original and do anything with it. I like to make a copy and do the body work on that copy and start doing all the things I need to make it look nice and shiny. And
How
from
long does it take to make a mold
um
for you to make a mold like that?
if it's brand new, it'll take about a week's worth of like trial and error to
Hmm.
kind of get it down. I've been doing this since 2005, so it's been 20 years of experience that things come a little quicker now. I
Are,
already anticipate,
are
you
there
know.
more parts? It just depends what you need and what condition you get it in. Are you building more?
Yes, I mean there's hood
Because these cars
ornaments.
continue to get older.
Right.
Before you know it, they'll be 90 and 100 years old.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about. Where's low riding going? How long is it going to last? The bombs are the first thing that are going to deteriorate. They're going to go away.
Yeah, a
But
42
your
Chevy,
reverse engineering here is going to keep it alive.
the 42 Chevy has a plastic flying lady hood ornament.
Right.
And I have that because the original was a crack inside. I would love to get an original one, and I know I speak for maybe many here. Using original parts is the way to go, but unfortunately, they don't last because of they weren't UV. Little not to get too technical, but a lot of the plastics that were used in the 40s were not UV resistant. So once the sun hits it over time, they crack, deteriorate.
Did you ever have interest in well, you're building this car? Is this will be your what, your second, third, fourth car as a bomb?
This is my second bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You have other plans in the future for other ones?
I
If
wouldn't
it's your
mind a 30s convertible, or I would probably keep it a little more stock. Maybe just lower it some
Chevy or
Chevy
yeah.
or Buick,
Hmm.
Cadillac.
Oh, there's a lot of parts out there, especially for Buick and Cadillac, that
Absolutely.
are obsolete that you can reverse engineer now.
Yeah, the 30s I would say is probably my top favorite because of that Art Deco time.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah.
Interior was you went and bought the fabric, you have the wood grain, you only have so many accessories. You went down that road of doing the interior in the car, not too bad, didn't take too long.
2.5 weeks. California Upholstery,
Hmm.
Joe,
Yeah.
they knocked it out in 2.5 weeks. I mean, I already knew California Upholstery from Lowrider magazine for the last 2 3 decades, so the name was not foreign to me. But my buddy Alex Rodriguez connected me through Joe, and yeah, we talked, and I took the car over there. I had the material from SMS Fabrics. Hampton Coach was around when I first got the 47. I had their catalog, but unfortunately, they're no longer around anymore. So I got it from SMS. That was also a waiting period because it was during the pandemic, 2020. And then Bill Hirsch was another place that sold me the mohair or a broadcloth. Long story short, I had the material. I gave it to Joe, and not cheap, but I wasn't going for cheap. I was going for quality, and these guys knocked it out. Him and his team there, they knocked it out. I was super impressed with the quality of work that they did.
And your final touch on wheels and tires, where
Uh,
did you go?
there's 5 lug steel rims, full dish hubcaps, the 500 by 15 white walls or bias ply. Nothing against radials. I just love that bias ply look on the
Mhm.
bomb. I would like wires in the future. I'm asking a lot of the guys like True Spoke, True Spokes, True Spoke. I grew up just reading about McLean and Dayton, so I don't know so much about True Spoke. So maybe something like that I can entertain in the future on the 47.
Mike Rommel should help you in that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's behind you putting wires on it because it's not a lowrider unless it's wired down.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that guy, but that's a good idea though. I mean, you can um car clubs.
I'm not in a car club. I know many of them because from our Chevy Bombs, our website, and our car shows. A lot of friends from the various clubs. Viejitos are a big club with the bombs. Alex Rodriguez is part of Diamond. I think it's Diamond Motor Car Club. So I'm not specifically in one. I would entertain in the near future. Just that I have a really busy life that it'd be tough for me to like maybe attend meetings right now. Yeah.
Um, then you don't want to alienate yourself too, because you've got friends all over the place in different car clubs, and they're all going to be, "Why didn't you join us?" Or
Yeah.
you don't want to do that. You're helping them all. It's all like being in one big happy car club, which
Absolutely.
is cool.
That's a really good way of saying it because that's how I felt like Chevy Bombs, the website. We created our own little family in there, and we had folks that were creating new chapters out of our website that were extending old memories and all that. But when we got together, it was just like one big bomb family, and that even extends out to Japan, where I met a lot of friends. They were folks that I connected with online in Japan, but I did have the opportunity to go in 2018. It was a work assignment. I had to go over there to look at some equipment, but after I looked at the equipment for a few hours and I said, "Hey, I'm done. Why not get together with a lot of the guys there in Japan?" The lowrider scene, I had read about it, I've seen stuff online, but when I saw it in person, I was blown away. Bombs, I mean, beautiful paint jobs, and the people were just really gracious and really just straight out friendly.
At the end of the day, your dream build that your masterpiece, where do you go with it? I know you're going to test it now. You're going to get it out there on the roads. I mean, there's car shows to be had everywhere to put it on display and all. Do you have anything that's on your bucket list that you got to go to display your car there? Because everybody's going to want to see this.
Sure. The last couple of years I haven't gone to car shows because I was definitely busy building, trying to finish this car. But lowrider, the lowrider shows, I'm not sure exactly what is active these days. I haven't really kept up, but I was taking my dad I had taken him to the Grand National Roadster Show
Hmm.
for his birthday because he's January birthday, and that's around the time the car show's at. And so I will be showing it at the Grand Nationals for the first time at the end of this month.
What does your dad think about your build?
Well, he came over when it was practically built. I mean, he got pretty teary eyed because he he saw himself there at the car. He saw the connection. To me, it was like a really good emotional moment because everything that he's taught me on cars and how to turn a wrench, he saw he I would say that's he saw in fruition the finished product, the car being finished. He just looked at it. He was super proud. For me, that was like the top.
It's got to be. I mean, all parents out there. I mean, they work so hard, and the only thing that they do, not just to provide something on the table or pay the rent or pay the house payment,
Right,
they want to see their kids grow up right or get an education and not work so hard like they had to. And for what you've done, I mean, even going to college and all of that, and it's really cool. And to be in the medical field and make molds but you can still go back down to earth and you're a car guy just like him. And that I mean, what could you want? I mean, he's got the best of both worlds. You made him proud. Um, and it's hard. I mean, talking to somebody with your education and what you do, it's like if you lived at the beach, all you want to do is surf, go out there and swim, hang out, open the windows. You don't need air conditioning. It's a different life.
right,
The fields that you're into and what you do and all that, to take a step back and look at everything that you've accomplished or what you can do, and you're still young. There's tons of things you want to do out there,
right,
but you want to take a step back and be a kid again and jump into low riding bombs and reinvent the wheel is what you're doing,
right,
not reverse. Yeah, and I think it's a great thing. I think this story, I think everybody should see out there. I think you're making it easier for everybody. I know there's a lot of guys out there, including myself, that wouldn't go into the headache of building something that's that old. But when you're reverse engineering over here and you're helping out everybody and they're getting involved and collaborating with you
Right.
to help this, I mean, I don't see this ending. That's great. It's always good to have, and you are a different type of role model, but that's beautiful. When you go back and look at everything that you've accomplished and what you've done, you got your whole future. Who would be your main influences? Any shout outs out there?
Uh, well, first and foremost, my wife has been a huge support. Has had a lot of patience and support in this endeavor because it has been a long journey on the car. Shout outs to obviously my dad, Dan, Mike Ramos, Alex Rodriguez. Alex has been the car would not be where it's at if he was not helping me out. He makes the trip out to my place and he teaches me how things go together because again, easy to take apart. Even though I studied the pictures and all that, he has so much knowledge and so much experience and lessons learned. He has transferred that information to me that he's been a huge help. So the car definitely would not be where it's at without his support. Ruben has also been a huge help. Ruben Cantoran, he is out in City Bell. Not only did he do the wood grain, but he also helped me customize the fabrication, the brackets for the engine and the transmission because they were more of a 50s type of engines and it wouldn't just directly drop into the car. Yeah, my family, my siblings, Jaime Trujillo, rest in peace. He was from the Viejitos Car Club. He was one of the guys on our Chevy Bombs chat or in the Chevy Bombs website. He loved to stir the pot. He loved to get people under their skin, but he loved it because he actually was the type of person to educate. He was a walking encyclopedia. The guy new cars. Him and his dad, they go back to lowriding. His car was he had a 50 Fleetline that was featured, I believe, in the magazine. Um, he did tell me, he says, Juan, if you go with the 261, you go with aircraft hydraulics, you go with the speed equipment, dual carburetor, keep it all stock in the inside, you're going to start setting, a standard on these cars that people may want to follow, because at the time I was like, this is good to me, but he was really knowledgeable of what kind of take it a step further than just kind of going with like something that's more of the run of the mill.
Well, craftsmanship never goes out of style,
Right.
and neither do those era of cars.
Right.
Handle. Do you have any? How would people get a hold of you? Do you mind that?
Not
For
at all.
anybody and everybody, how would they get a hold of you?
Aeroman. So Aeroman from so that was my original Chevy Bombs name on there, but Aeroman 76. So AEROMAN 76 on Instagram.
Uh huh.
So really active on Instagram. I had posted a lot of my progress through Instagram the last 4 or 5 years on there. Yeah,
And for everybody out there, man, we can't wait to see this ride that you came up with and the many more that you'll build going down the line. I'm sure you've made all your mentors very proud, just the same. You just got to keep on doing what you're doing. Need more like you. So we have like a scientist, everybody, reverse engineering, bringing back eras from the 40s, the 30s, and the 40s, keeping it alive. And well, you can see his artifacts that he can build right there. Man, it's a pleasure having you on here. It's a heck of an education for me. And I'm sure a lot of bomb guys out there, you just pump new life into all of us.
fantastic.
So you won't have any more strokes or anything like that because we're all stressed out, especially when it comes to a build like that.
Right.
But thanks for making things more simplified for us. So there you go. There's another episode of the Wired Down Show, everybody. A very entertaining and educated one. Juan Ramirez, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Got to get you back again and can't wait for your next build, but we got to see this one first. All right, everybody. Thanks for being with us.